Good morning. Here we are again looking at Genesis. Today we'll be in Genesis 46 and 47. So you can get with us there. And we'll begin reading Genesis 46, verse 1. So Jacob set out for Egypt with all his possessions. Okay, so we're picking up here in the continuation of the account. So Joseph and has sent word back to his father that he's alive. His brothers had to go back and explain to him. Can you imagine that conversation after selling Joseph the slaves and deceiving their father and all the years of mourning and sorrow he went through? They had to go back and explain. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. Repentance, making right, sometimes is a lot harder than it would have been if you just told the truth in the beginning. And but yet they didn't. And so now all these years later, they have to explain this to their father of what took place. And so now he's gathered everything up because of the famine in Canaan, and he's going to Egypt where Joseph is. And so we see that. And when he came to Beersheba, he offered a sacrifice to God of his father Isaac, which is his God. It's an inheritance that was passed down from Abraham and Isaac and Jacob to carry on. So, too, during the night, God spoke to him in a vision. Jacob, Jacob, he called. Here I am, Jacob replied. I think that's interesting. At night, I have many conversations with the Lord at night. I think it's, as I often say, it's because it's the one time my mouth is shut and my ears are open. But I think God speaks to us a lot. It says in the quiet, still voice, and so at night, and draws our attention to Him. And if we wake up in the middle of the night, we got to seek Him to see, hey, is there something there that you want to hear from us? And so Jacob did. Here I am. Jacob replied, verse 3, I am God, the God of your father. The voice said, I am God. We will soon see that again when Moses comes along, and Moses says, who are you? And he says, I am the I am. And all through Scripture, we see that I am, meaning that I have always been, I will always be. And there never was before. There was nothing. I never wasn't. I always was. I am the God of your father. The voice said, do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make your family into a great nation. I will go with you down to Egypt, and I will bring you back again, and you will die in Egypt, but Joseph will be with you to close your eyes. So God gives him a little bit more insight of what's happening. First, he calms his fear. We don't know it. It doesn't tell us, but apparently he was a little nervous about this process and this trip. And I wonder if he's thinking, is it really Joseph? Is somebody playing a trick on us? Whatever it may be. But he was nervous, but God reassured him. He is on the right path and he's going the right way. And I think that's important because there are many times in our life, in our relationship with God, that we need reassured. The enemy, which from the very beginning of the Bible brought doubt. And, so there must have been some doubt there. And God is bringing him assurance as he often does. And we all often love to hear the assurance of the Lord. And God gave him the plan of what was going to take place. Verse 5. So Jacob left Beersheba, and his sons took him to Egypt. They carried him and their little ones and their wives in the wagons Pharaoh had provided for them, 6. They also took all their livestock and all their personal belongings they had acquired in the land of Canaan. So Jacob and his entire family went to Egypt, 7 sons and grandsons and daughters and granddaughters and all his descendants, 8. These are the names of the descendants of Israel, the sons of Jacob, who went to Egypt. And so we begin there in the end of verse 8 all the way through down verse 26, the total number of Jacob's direct descendants who went with him in Egypt, not exceeding his sons and wives, was 66. In addition, Joseph had 2 sons who were born in Egypt. So altogether, there were 70 members of Jacob's family in the land of Egypt. That's quite a church, right? That's what it is. Israel, God's people, it was a church. And so the church is now spreading out in Egypt. 28. As they neared the destination, Jacob sent Jude ahead to meet Joseph and get directions to the region of Goshen. And when they finally arrived there, 29, Joseph prepared his chariot and traveled to Goshen to meet his father Jacob. When Joseph arrived, he embraced his father and wept, holding him for a long time. 30, finally, Jacob said to Joseph, now I am ready to die, since I have seen your face again and know you are alive. His misery was taken away. His comfort was brought. Peace was given to him because of the Son. The same is eternally true for us. The Son of God gives us peace. He gives us hope. He gives us a future. He's ready to end and come to that place because of who he is and where he is and what he is doing. And what great comfort is that. I've got someone coming, and so getting ready to try to find my camera and open it so I can see. Why can I not find it? That's weird. Just bear with me just a second here. Kind of frustrating here. I know it's right here. I guess we're going to do without it, right? Because I can't find it right now. And so comfort and peace comes because of that. Let's look at verse 31. So Joseph said to his brothers and his father, entire family, I will go to Pharaoh and tell him, my brother and my father and my entire family have come to me from the land of Canaan. 32. These men are shepherds and they raise livestock. They have brought with them their flocks and herds and everything they own. 33. Then he said, when Pharaoh calls for you and asks you about your occupation, you must tell him you are servants, having raised livestock all your lives, as your ancestors have always done. When you tell him this, he will let you live here in the region of Goshen, for the Egyptians despise shepherds. Okay, so Joseph is giving them what they need to succeed in what he's doing. And so, and let them live. Now, we also already see an issue and a problem, but we'll look at that as we continue on in chapter 47. When Joseph went to Pharaoh and told him, my father and my brothers have arrived in the land of Canaan, from the land of Canaan. They have come with all their flocks and herds and possessions, and they are now in the region of Goshen. 2. Joseph took 5 of his brothers with him and presented them to Pharaoh. 3. And Pharaoh asked his brothers, what are your occupations? They replied, we are servants, are shepherds, just like our ancestors. We have come to live here in the land of Egypt for a while, for there is no pastures for our flocks in Canaan. A famine is very severe there, so please, we request permission to live in the region of Goshen. 5. Pharaoh said to Joseph, now that your fathers and brothers have joined you here, choose any place in the entire land of Egypt for them to live. Give them the best land in Egypt. Let them live in the region of Goshen. And if any of them have special skills, put them in charge of my livestock too. 7. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and presented him to Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. 8. How old are you? Pharaoh asked him. Jacob replied, I have traveled this earth for 130 hard years, but my life has been shortened compared to the life of my ancestors. 10. Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh again, living before leaving his court. So Joseph assigned the best land in Egypt in the region of Ramsey to his father and his brother, and he settled them there just as Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph provided food for his father and his brothers in an amount appropriate to the number of descendants, including small children. And so he was fair with them and he gave them the best. Now we see the two lands that are mentioned, Goshen and Ramsey, which later are where the Egyptians still are, or the Israelites still are, and where Pharaoh later is burdening them and pushing hard on them and causing all the problems where where Moses comes and rescues them. But that's for later. But take note of those two towns because those are the same places we'll hear about a little bit later. 13. Meanwhile, the famine became so severe that all the food was used up and people were starving throughout the land of Egypt and Canaan. By selling grain to the people, Joseph eventually collected the money in Egypt and Canaan, and he put the money in Pharaoh's treasury. 15. When the people of Egypt and Canaan ran out of money, all the Egyptians came to Joseph. Our money is gone, they cried, but please give us food, or we will die before your very eyes. Joseph replied, since your money is gone, bring me your livestock. I will give you food in exchange for your livestock. So they brought the livestock to Joseph in exchange for food, in exchange for their horses, flocks, and sheep, and goat, and herds, and cattle, and donkey. Joseph provided with food for another year. But that year ended, and the next year they came again and said, we cannot hide the truth from you, O my Lord. Our money is gone, and all our livestock and cattle are yours. We have nothing left to give you but our bodies and our land. 19. Why should we die before your very eyes? Buy us and our land in exchange for food. We offered our land and ourselves as slaves to Pharaoh. Just give us grain so we may live and not die, and so that the land does not become empty and desolate. 20. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. All the Egyptians sold him their fields because the famine was so severe, and soon all the land belonged to Pharaoh. 21. As for the people, he made them all slaves from one end of Egypt to the other. The only land that he did not buy was the land that belonged to the priest. They received an allotment of food directly from Pharaoh, so they didn't need to sell their land. 23. Then Joseph said to the people, look, today I have brought you and your land. I have bought you and your land from Pharaoh. I will provide you with the seeds so you can plant the fields. Then you will harvest it. 1/5 of your crop will belong to Pharaoh. You will keep the remaining 4/5 of the seeds of your field and the food for your family and household and for your little ones. You have saved our lives, they explained. May it please you, my Lord, to let us be Pharaoh's servants. Joshua 26. Then Joshua issued a decree, still in effect in the land of Egypt, that Pharaoh should receive 1/5 of all the crops grown on the land. Only the land belonging to the priest was not given to Pharaoh. 27. Meanwhile, the people of Israel settled in the region of Goshen. The people of Israel, that's Jacob's people, that's Joshua's family, that's Joseph's family, that's the whole line from there on. Settled in the region of Goshen, Egypt. They acquired property and they were fruitful, and their population grew rapidly. 28. Jacob lived for 17 years after arriving in Egypt. He was 147 in all. 29. As the time of his death drew near, Jacob called his son Joseph, and he said, please do me a favor. Put your hand under my thigh and swear that you will treat me with unfailing love by honoring this last request. Do not bury me in Egypt. When I die, please take my body out of Egypt and bury me with my ancestors. So Joseph promised, I will do as you ask. 31. Swear that you will do it. Jacob insisted. So Joseph gave the oath, and Jacob bowed humbly by the head of his bed. We're going to be seeing a very turning point here. Blessings lasted so long. People got comfortable and they began to let down their guard. And how true that is for us as well. We enjoy the blessings of God, but then we get lazy, and then we get stagnant, and then we just go through the motions of things, and bad things happen. But we see here the truth of God, the glory of God, the protection of God, and the people for generations surviving because of God's faithfulness. I hope you know the faithfulness of God today, and you rest in his strength.